If the world forgot your name, who would still recognize you? Why should you care? Because sometimes loyalty and compassion can save a life, especially when the system forgets to. The late afternoon sun slanted through the trees at Jacobson Park, slicing the chilly Milwaukee air with streaks of gold. The playground echoed with laughter, squeaky swings, and the familiar chaos of kids chasing each other across wood chips. In the far corner, away from the noise, a weathered figure sat hunched on a splintered bench, his posture hunched, his hands buried deep in the pockets of a battered old coat, a duffel bag gripped so tight that his knuckles showed white through grimy skin. Walter Price looked like a ghost in the daylight, his face creased with the weight of years and hardship, his eyes following the children's games with a longing that nobody noticed. Until someone did. A mother, voice tense, called 911. "There's a man here. He looks, I don't know, homeless. He's watching the kids. Please, can someone check it out?" Her words carried the subtle fear that comes from headlines and warnings. And within minutes, the first squad car rolled to a stop at the edge of the playground. The blue lights flashed over the swings and slides, casting nervous shadows. Officer Morales stepped out, hands on his belt, scanning the scene with a practiced gaze. His partner, Officer Green, radioed for backup before they even crossed the mulch. The parents clustered closer, arms wrapped protectively around their children, whispers swirling. "Who is he? What's he doing here? Should we go?" Morales approached Walter with deliberate caution, voice projecting just enough authority. "Sir, we need you to stand up and show us what's in your bag." Walter blinked, startled, as if roused from another world. His eyes struggled to focus. What's happening? I'm just sitting." Morales' tone hardened. "We got a call, sir. Stand up and open the bag, please." Walter's hands trembled as he struggled with the zipper, the bag so old that its teeth snagged. The kids had gone silent, eyes wide, the parents pulling them back. Morales signaled his partner. "We need to clear the playground. Everyone, please move to the parking lot." The parents shuffled away, some filming on their phones, the air heavy with suspicion and fear. Walter fumbled, muttering, "It's just my stuff. I'm not doing anything." But his confusion, his slowness, only heightened the officer's anxiety. The tension built as more patrol cars arrived. The radio crackled. "Possible mental health issue, maybe PTSD, unknown if armed." The phrase hung in the air, a dangerous uncertainty. Walter's confusion grew. Am I in trouble? I just wanted to watch the kids play." His words sounded harmless, but the world didn't hear the loneliness in them. Officer Green, young and edgy, unsnapped his holster. "Sir, step away from the bag." Walter hesitated, clutching it tighter. Morales' patience frayed. "Let go, sir, right now." The moment teetered on the edge of escalation. Backup arrived in the form of a tall woman in a K-9 unit uniform, her silhouette sharp against the fading light. Officer Jenna Brooks had a reputation for doing things by the book, but her eyes, even behind mirrored sunglasses, missed nothing. At her side, a German shepherd stood alert, leash taut, his gaze fixed on Walter. Jenna's voice cut through the mounting noise. "Everyone step back. Let's do this safe." Morales shot her a look, relief and challenge in equal measure. Jenna nodded. "Sir, I'm going to ask my partner here to check your bag. Please step back and let the dog approach." Walter's whole body tensed. His lips moved, soundless, like he was searching for a memory just out of reach. No, I can't. It's all I have." His words were so raw that for a moment, even the officers paused. But training took over. Jenna crouched beside the dog, whispering a command. The shepherd's ears pricked, muscles coiling. The onlookers pressed closer, phones raised, capturing the spectacle. Someone muttered, "This is about to get ugly." Another whispered, "That poor old man, what did he even do?" Green, now sweating, radioed in. "Subject is non-compliant, requesting further instructions." Dispatch's reply crackled back, "Maintain distance until K9 secures the scene." As tension escalated, Walter's confusion crossed into fear. "Please, please don't take my things." His voice was almost childlike. Jenna hesitated just a heartbeat, then stood and gave the order, "Duke, take down!" The shepherd surged forward, muscles rippling, teeth bared, a living weapon, years of training focused on this moment. For one frozen instant, everyone held their breath. The scene hung in the balance. Children's screams just under the surface. Officers tensed, ready to intervene. The world watched as an old man and a dog collided at the crossroads of fear and memory. In that charged, electric air, the truth waited, unseen, unguessed, about to rewrite everything the city thought it knew about loyalty, loss, and the things we choose to remember. Officer Jenna Brooks knew the rules, and she trusted her partner Duke more than anyone else in her life. The German Shepherd was the department's pride, steady, unflinching, trained to perfection. As Duke rushed forward, the world seemed to tighten around the playground, every eye locked on the blur of fur and muscle. Parents gasped, some shielding their children's eyes. The air buzzed with the anticipation of violence. An old man on the defensive, a police dog mid-attack. Jenna's heart hammered in her chest. She had given the order. Now it was out of her hands, but halfway across the wood chips, Duke faltered. His charge slowed. He let out a low whimper, a confused, almost mournful sound that no one expected. The dog's posture softened, hackles flattening. He paused just feet from Walter, his nose working overtime as he took in the scent of the man before him. Jenna's hand flew up in surprise, the leash slack in her grip. The other officers tensed, unsure whether to advance or pull back. Morales snapped, "What's wrong with your dog?" Jenna shook her head, her voice tight. "He's never done this before." "Duke, take down," she repeated, but the command seemed to bounce off Duke like rain off a stone. The dog ignored her, ears pinned back in uncertainty. He inched forward, not with the ferocity of a trained police dog, but with the cautious curiosity of a friend recognizing someone from a dream. Walter, hands still clinging to his duffel, stared down in disbelief as the German Shepherd approached. His lips trembled, his eyes suddenly bright with something more than fear. "Easy, easy, boy," Walter whispered, his tone not pleading but familiar, as if recalling an old secret. The crowd, sensing a break in the tension, leaned closer. Phones caught every second. The wind seemed to hush. Duke crept closer. He whined softly, tail wagging low, his whole body quivering, not from aggression, but from the trembling possibility of recognition. He nuzzled Walter's free hand, pushing against it until Walter, overwhelmed, let the duffel slip to the ground. The old man's hand found the thick fur behind Duke's ear. He stroked the dog with a tenderness that made Jenna's breath catch. The playground, moments before a scene of chaos, grew strangely still. Even the children sensed the shift, peeking from behind their parents' legs. Officer Green stepped forward, gun still at his side, but Jenna held up a hand. "Wait, something's happening here." She crouched lower, calling to her partner, "Duke, come!" But Duke stayed put, pressing closer to Walter, letting out a whine that sounded almost like a sob. Walter swallowed hard. His voice shook. "Duke, is that really you?" The name, spoken aloud, hit Jenna like a punch to the gut. It was as if the very air vibrated. Duke's reaction was instant and electric. He barked, a sharp, joyful sound, then pressed his head to Walter's chest, tail wagging furiously now, whining and yelping in frantic happiness. Walter crumpled to his knees, arms thrown around the dog, face buried in Duke's fur. Jenna watched, mouth dry, as the realization dawned. The police dog, her partner, her pride, was acting not like an officer's animal, but like a long-lost pet finding home after years in the wilderness. The onlookers murmured. Some wiped away tears. A little girl near the swing whispered, "The dog loves him. He knows him." Morales, ever the skeptic, radioed in. "Possible subject has prior history with K9. Need a name check, Walter Price. Cross-check with military records. Something's off here." The dispatcher's reply was a hesitant, "Copy that. Stand by." Green holstered his weapon, the tension in his jaw easing. Jenna inched closer, crouching beside Walter and Duke. "Sir," she said gently, "do you know this dog?" Walter's hands shook as he stroked Duke's head. He nodded, eyes swimming with memories. "We served together, years ago. He was my partner, my only friend." The story began to spill out, pieces and fragments at first. "I thought he was gone. I thought I was gone." His voice cracked, raw with grief and relief tangled together. How is he here?" Jenna shook her head, at a loss. "Duke was assigned to me 2 years ago. He's the best partner I've ever had. But he's never acted like this. Never." Duke, meanwhile, was oblivious to everything except Walter. He licked the old man's face, pawing at his chest, whining in a way that sounded almost like words. The duffel, forgotten, lay on the ground. Jenna carefully nudged it aside, glancing at Morales, who began searching Walter's name on his phone. "It doesn't make sense," Morales muttered. "If this is true, we need to know how." The crowd shifted, their fear now transformed into fascination, some into hope. People lowered their phones, realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. A police dog refusing violence in favor of recognition. A homeless veteran reclaiming a piece of himself thought lost forever. Jenna radioed dispatch, her voice trembling. "Subject is calm. K9 is non-aggressive. We need a supervisor here and... Can you pull all military records for a Walter Price, possible K9 handler, possible missing in action?" Dispatch replied, "On it." For a long moment, nothing moved except the trembling reunion of man and dog. The world seemed to pause, as if honoring the lost years, the sacrifices, the kind of loyalty that survives war, memory, and the grinding machinery of the system. Jenna, eyes stinging, realized she was seeing a miracle. A trained police dog breaking every rule in the book, answering only to a call written somewhere deep in his heart. She knelt beside them, reaching out to steady Walter's shaking hand. "It's okay," she said quietly, tears prickling her eyes. "You're safe now. Duke's got you. We all do." In the fading Milwaukee light, the crowd parted, witnesses not to a crime, but to something far more rare. The moment when instincts are more powerful than orders, and the heart remembers what the mind cannot. The hush that had settled over Jacobson Park didn't break, not even when the police radios crackled and another squad car arrived at the curb. It was as if every adult and child could sense that something deeply important, something bigger than a police protocol or a simple misunderstanding, was happening right in front of them. For the first time in a long while, Walter Price felt the world slow down for him, not sweep past in a blur. Duke, the big German shepherd, stayed pressed close to Walter, head tucked under the old man's chin, body trembling with excitement and recognition. His tail thudded against the ground in a wild, joyous rhythm. Jenna Brooks crouched nearby, her own eyes clouded with awe and confusion. Duke, who followed every command without hesitation, had just disobeyed her for the first time since they'd been partnered. But the moment didn't feel like a failure. It felt like a secret being unlocked. Morales was still on the radio, tension bleeding from his voice. "Dispatch, do you have anything on this guy yet?" Static, then a clipped response. "Working on it, officer. Cross-checking all records for a Walter Price, military and local." Another officer approached Jenna, voice low. "You need to get Duke under control." Jenna didn't look away from Walter and the dog. "He is under control, maybe more than the rest of us." Walter's fingers tangled in Duke's fur, voice wavering. "You remember me, don't you, buddy? Even after all this time?" Duke whined, nudging Walter's hand as if to say, "Of course." The sight did something to the crowd. The tension drained out of shoulders. Parents relaxed, some letting their kids creep forward, curiosity replacing fear. A young boy with tangled curls asked his mother, "Can I pet the dog?" His mother, tears on her cheeks, nodded. The bystanders' phones were still up, but their reasons for filming had changed. This wasn't evidence of a threat now. It was a record of something people would talk about for weeks, maybe years. A reunion, a mystery, a living answer to the question, can love and loyalty survive everything? Jenna cleared her throat, voice gentle. "Mr. Price, can you tell me what happened? How do you know Duke?" Walter blinked, the question floating through the fog of his mind. I'm not sure. The last few years, they get all mixed up." He looked at Jenna, apologetic. "But Duke was with me. Before I was lost." His eyes flicked down, searching for a thread of memory. "We were in Iraq. I handled him. He saved my life over and over. I thought I lost him when the world exploded." A knot formed in Jenna's chest. "What do you mean, when the world exploded?" Walter shivered, one hand gripping his duffel like a life raft. "There was a bomb. Roadside, they called it an IED. Everything went dark. I woke up somewhere strange, and then I didn't wake up at all. Not really. Just drifted for years. They said I was dead, I guess. Maybe I was." The officers exchanged glances. Green, softer now, asked, "You're saying you were reported dead? That you went missing?" Walter nodded. "That's what they told me later, when I started remembering again. Only pieces. Faces, smells. Duke." He pressed his face to the dog's head, breathing deep. "I remembered Duke first." Jenna's hand rested on Duke's back. "He was assigned to me 2 years ago. They said he was a rescue, retrained from military to police. Nobody told me where he came from before that." She looked at Walter, voice thick. "He saved my life too. Maybe that's why he recognized you, even when I gave him the order." Morales lowered his radio, a stunned look on his face. "Dispatch found something. Walter Price, Army K-9 handler, declared missing in action 8 years ago after an attack in Iraq. Presumed dead. No next of kin. No closure." He stepped back, eyes darting between Walter and Duke. "What the hell is happening here?" Jenna stood, her legs shaky. "What's happening is Duke just proved he remembers his first partner, even after all the training, all the years. That's what's happening." The crowd murmured, some clapping, others just wiping their eyes. Walter, still on his knees, reached for Jenna's hand. "Thank you for taking care of him." His voice broke, but his face was alive with a joy that made him look decades younger. "He's the only part of me I wanted to keep." Jenna smiled, kneeling beside him. "You're both heroes, Mr. Price, and I think you deserve each other." Suddenly, the duffel bag, which had been all but forgotten, caught the attention of Officer Green. For safety's sake, he crouched and opened it carefully. Out spilled mementos, faded letters, a frayed American flag, a picture of a much younger Walter in uniform with a young, smiling German shepherd at his side. The evidence of a life scattered on the playground mulch. Jenna picked up the photo, holding it for the crowd to see. "This is them," she said quietly. "Walter and Duke, before any of us knew them." The moment felt sacred. The playground, once a place of suspicion and fear, now felt like a temple, witness to a miracle. The police, the parents, the children, even the city itself seemed to realize they were standing in the presence of something rare and pure. A bond that defied protocol, time, and even death. People began to applaud. Some offered blankets, coffee, food. A local reporter slipped through the crowd, camera ready, sensing a headline. For once, Walter Price wasn't invisible. And Duke wasn't just a tool of the system. They were partners, finally, unmistakably, reunited. And as the sun sank low over Milwaukee, painting the park in gold, everyone understood that some things, the things that truly matter, can never be forgotten. The last slant of sun drifted across the playground, catching on the fluttering edges of Walter's old Army photograph, still held gently in Officer Jenna Brooks's hands. For a while, no one wanted to break the moment, the kind of silence that feels holy, as if the whole city were holding its breath in respect. But reality, as always, pressed back in. Police radios squawked with new calls. A local TV van, the station's logo plastered on the side, nosed onto the grass, and reporters started moving through the crowd with hurried questions and eager cameras. Walter sat on the mulch, Duke pressed against his knee, overwhelmed by it all. The world had found him again, but the world hadn't waited for him. Everything was loud, fast, complicated. A young, nervous officer offered him a cup of water. "Sir, are you all right?" Walter nodded, a shaky, grateful smile on his lips. "I think so. It's a lot, all at once." He ran his fingers through Duke's fur, drawing courage from the dog's steady presence. As more police cars arrived, Morales and Green tried to keep things orderly, but people pressed closer, hungry for answers. Jenna found herself fielding questions from reporters, their voices a blur. "How did you know the dog would recognize him? Will Walter be charged with anything? What happens to Duke now?" Jenna's responses were careful but honest. "Duke's training is solid. What you saw tonight wasn't just training. It was something deeper. This isn't about policy. It's about what's right." City officials showed up, a district supervisor in a smart suit, the city's public information officer, and a legal advisor, all looking tense. Their job was to manage crises, but this was something different. The legal advisor whispered to Jenna, "Technically, the dog is city property, an active K9. This gets tricky if there's media involved." Jenna frowned, bristling at the thought. Tricky? He's not a car. He's not a piece of equipment. He's a living, breathing partner, and that man is his family. Walter's memory began to return in fragments. The bomb in Iraq, the chaos. He remembered crawling, bleeding, dragging Duke behind a toppled Humvee. He remembered calling for help, but the world had faded to a buzzing haze. "They told me I was dead," he murmured to Jenna, voice low. "They wrote me off, sent my things home in a box. I wandered for years. Sometimes I'd forget my own name, but I never forgot Duke. Every day I woke up hoping I'd find him. Most days, I didn't even know what city I was in." Jenna knelt beside him, moved beyond words. I'm so sorry. None of this should have happened. The news crews filmed the emotional reunion, interviews running live on the local stations. One reporter stuck a microphone in Walter's face. "How does it feel, sir, to see your dog again after all these years?" Walter's eyes glistened. "I don't think there are words for it. I lost everything. But Duke, he remembered me. That's all I needed." The crowd clapped. Some strangers hugged Walter, others petted Duke. The playground, once suspicious, became a scene of celebration and hope. But not everyone was pleased. A tall man in a city uniform, the K9 unit supervisor, strode up, all business. "Officer Brooks, per regulations, Duke is to be returned to police custody immediately. He's an asset, not a pet. This is a departmental matter now." Jenna stiffened. "He's more than an asset, sir. You saw what just happened. He's not going to be the same on patrol after this." The supervisor's jaw tightened. "The department can't make exceptions. If we start down that road, where does it end?" Jenna squared her shoulders, her voice steady. "Maybe it ends with doing the right thing, instead of just following the rules." Walter, overhearing, squeezed Duke closer. "I won't fight you," he said softly, "but I won't let him go again unless you make me." The supervisor signaled to take Duke by the leash. Duke immediately growled, a deep, warning rumble that made everyone pause. Jenna quickly put herself between Duke and the supervisor. "Stop. Please, let's take a breath." The standoff drew the eyes of everyone on scene, the crowd tense and murmuring. Meanwhile, Morales received an update from dispatch. Walter Price, confirmed as Army K9 handler. PTSD, memory loss, no record of criminal activity, homeless for years. He read the note aloud for the supervisor to hear. The mood shifted. This wasn't some vagrant with a dog. This was a war hero whose only crime was falling through the cracks. As the city officials deliberated, a veteran from the crowd stepped forward. "I served too," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You don't leave a man behind. Not overseas, not here." Other veterans joined him, voicing support. The community began to rally around Walter, chanting, "Let them stay together! Let them stay together!" Legal advisors tried to regain control, but the emotional tide was too strong. Jenna, fighting back tears, gave her statement to the reporters. "Duke is a hero, not just a resource. Walter is the only family he remembers. Sometimes, the right choice means rewriting the policy." The supervisor looked at Walter, at Duke, at the sea of determined faces. Something in his stance softened. The city's public information officer, sensing the shift, stepped to the microphone. "We're reviewing the situation. Due to the exceptional circumstances and overwhelming public support, the city will allow Duke to be temporarily placed with Walter until a final decision is made." The crowd erupted in cheers. Walter hugged Duke tightly, for once feeling the weight of the past lift. Jenna squeezed his shoulder. "We'll fight for you, both of you." Walter, voice rough, replied, "You already have." As night settled over Milwaukee, the playground slowly emptied. But Walter and Duke remained, a living testament to the loyalty that had survived war, loss, and a broken system. The shadows of the past still clung to Walter, but for the first time in years, he didn't face them alone. And as Duke rested his head in Walter's lap, the old soldier finally allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, the world would remember his name. News of the extraordinary reunion between Walter and Duke rippled across Milwaukee overnight. The story was everywhere. TV, social media, and even the morning papers. War hero and K9 reunited after 8 years. The public response was overwhelming. The city's official social media accounts were flooded with comments and calls, many urging officials to let the heroes stay together. A photo of Walter hugging Duke at the playground went viral, inspiring hundreds of local residents to reach out with offers of support, food, or even a place for Walter to stay. But while the city buzzed with hope and empathy, the machinery of policy and bureaucracy spun up behind closed doors. By sunrise, a special meeting had been called at City Hall. Jenna Brooks stood outside the marble municipal building, Duke sitting loyally by her side, while Walter nervously clutched his battered duffel bag, eyes flicking anxiously over the unfamiliar crowd. Reporters were everywhere, microphones thrust toward anyone in uniform. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. City attorneys and police leadership gathered around a polished wood table. Some spoke in legalese about city property, liability, and precedent. Others spoke in hushed tones about public perception and how this could become a nightmare for the department if handled poorly. The K-9 unit supervisor insisted, "Duke is an active asset. The department invested years of training and thousands of dollars. He has to remain under police control." The legal advisor echoed, "It's not just about feelings. We have to follow the process, or we'll be swamped with requests like this in the future." But then Jenna spoke, her voice low but unwavering. "With all respect, this isn't just about process. You all saw what happened. Duke broke protocol because of something no training can teach. That dog made a choice, and it saved Walter's life and maybe a piece of his soul. If we ignore that, what are we really serving? The city, or just the system?" Her words hung in the air. Outside, the public gathered in support. Veterans, some in faded uniforms, others in wheelchairs, stood shoulder to shoulder with families and dog lovers. Homemade signs waved, "Heroes belong together," "Compassion over policy." Even some of the officers found themselves torn. Morales and Green, who had started the day just following orders, now privately debated what was right. "You saw the old man's face," Green whispered. "You saw the dog. You can't fake that kind of love." Inside, a city councilwoman named Linda Vasquez took the floor, her tone calm but urgent. "We have to remember why we serve. Policies are important, but so is compassion. I propose we retire Duke from active service and place him with Walter. We have the authority in exceptional circumstances. And this," she gestured to the images on the big screen, Duke and Walter side by side, "is exceptional." A heated debate followed. Some worried about setting a precedent, others about the headlines if the city seemed heartless. But the public's voice grew louder. The live feed outside showed people chanting Walter's name. Jenna's phone buzzed with texts from colleagues and strangers alike. "Fight for them! Don't let the city split them up." The city attorney raised a final concern. "What about Walter's ability to care for Duke? He's been homeless, struggling with memory and trauma. Are we really helping them both, or just making ourselves feel better?" The question stung, but Jenna was ready. Walter deserves a chance, and there are people willing to help, nonprofits, veterans groups, even our own department. If the city partners with them, we can make sure both of them get what they need. The room fell silent. Finally, the mayor arrived, called in by the commotion. She listened carefully to all sides, then turned to Walter, who had been waiting quietly in the hallway. "Mr. Price, would you be willing to accept help from the city and our partners if Duke was retired to your care?" Walter nodded, voice trembling with emotion. "I'd do anything to give him the home he deserves. He saved me more than once. It's my turn to save him." Moved by the humility in his words, the mayor made her decision. She spoke first to the cameras so the whole city could hear. "Because of the unique bond between Walter Price and Duke, and in recognition of their shared service to this country and this city, I am authorizing Duke's immediate retirement from the police department. He will live with Walter, and the city will provide support to make sure they both thrive. Sometimes, policy must bend to serve the people. A roar of applause exploded outside. Jenna hugged Walter, and even some of the hardened officers wiped tears from their eyes. Reporters rushed to break the news. Milwaukee Grant's emotional reunion. Duke retired. Will live with war hero Walter Price. The crowd outside chanted, "Thank you, thank you." Morales grinned, clapping Green on the back. Looks like the system finally did something right. But behind the celebration, the city quietly got to work. Partnerships were announced with veterans services and local nonprofits. An apartment at a respected veterans home was made available to Walter and Duke, fully funded by a combination of city grants and donations. Walter would receive medical care and therapy. Duke would get to live out his days not as a tool of law enforcement, but as a companion and symbol of hope. As Jenna and Walter left City Hall, Duke walking proudly between them, Jenna looked back at the building, a weight lifted from her shoulders. "You ready for a new chapter, Mr. Price?" Walter smiled, tears streaking his cheeks. "As long as Duke's with me, I can face anything." That night, as Milwaukee celebrated a small victory of the heart over bureaucracy, the city was reminded, sometimes the system can deliver justice, but it takes ordinary people demanding compassion to make it happen. For the first time in years, Walter Price awoke to the sound of gentle breathing at his side. Not the harsh shuffle of city traffic or the unpredictable noise of shelter dormitories. Sunlight spilled softly through the window of his new room, a modest but bright space in the Oak Haven Veterans Home on Milwaukee's east side. Walter blinked at the golden rectangles on the wall and turned toward the shape curled beside his bed. Duke, already awake, alert and content, head resting on his paws as if he'd been guarding Walter all night. It felt surreal. The city had moved fast, driven by the outpouring of public support and a wave of donations. In just 48 hours, Walter had gone from a park bench and uncertainty to a clean bed, fresh linens, and a sense of security he'd nearly forgotten. The Veterans Home, run by a mix of city officials, nonprofit volunteers, and counselors who greeted each new arrival by name, felt nothing like an institution. It was filled with warmth and shared understanding. Each resident carried their own scars, but also a stubborn pride and camaraderie. The staff treated Walter as a hero, not a case number, and everyone, residents, nurses, maintenance guys, wanted to meet Duke. On his first morning, Walter shuffled nervously down the hallway, Duke at his heel. The other vets gathered in the common room, mugs of coffee in hand, watching the morning news coverage of Walter and Duke's reunion play on TV. There was no judgment, only curiosity and, eventually, grins. A bearded man named Calvin, in a faded marine sweatshirt, was the first to approach. "So you're the guy with the miracle dog, huh?" Walter managed a shy nod. "Guess that's me." Calvin knelt to scratch Duke's ears. "You're both welcome here. If you ever need a card game partner, I'm your man." Others echoed the sentiment. There were handshakes, back slaps, even a few stories shared about old dogs in far-off places. The staff had already set up medical appointments for Walter, physical checkups, sessions with a trauma counselor, and help with the tangle of paperwork that had once seemed impossible. For the first time since the explosion in Iraq, Walter felt hope was something he could actually touch. He took his medicine and met with Dr. Chen, the house psychologist, who listened more than she talked and encouraged Duke to stay for every appointment. "A therapy dog in every sense," she said, smiling as Duke curled at Walter's feet during their first session. "You have each other's backs. That's powerful medicine." As Duke officially retired from police service, Jenna Brooks herself came by to deliver a new tag for his collar. It read simply, "Duke, Buddy." The small ceremony, just Walter, Jenna, the head of the home, and a few residents, felt more meaningful than any parade. Jenna knelt to hug Duke, then squeezed Walter's hand. You gave him a second life. He did the same for you. That's the kind of partnership we all dream about. Walter, moved to tears, found it hard to answer. But the bond between the three of them, formed through trial and loss, needed no words. Days passed, and Walter and Duke fell into a gentle rhythm. They took long morning walks in the courtyard, where Duke sniffed the spring grass and wagged his tail at the squirrels. Residents and staff would stop to greet them, sometimes just to share a story or offer a treat for Duke. In the afternoons, Walter joined group therapy sessions, where Duke's calm presence had a surprising effect. Other veterans, some of whom rarely spoke, began to open up, sharing memories and pain that had been buried for years. One grizzled vet, Big Al, summed it up best. There's just something about a dog who's seen what you've seen. He gets it. Makes you feel less alone. Walter was surprised to find his own mind clearing, his nights growing quieter. With Duke at his side, he slept deeper, haunted less often by nightmares of sand and fire and the deafening noise of war. The staff made sure he had the right medication and a steady routine. When the city's social worker, Miss Perez, visited to check on their adjustment, she smiled at the sight of Walter and Duke sprawled together on the sunlit floor of the recreation room. "You look like you belong here," she said, and Walter realized she was right. News of their story continued to spread. Local businesses donated food and supplies to Oak Haven. Children from a nearby school sent letters and hand-drawn pictures. "Thank you for being brave," read one in crayon, with stick figures of a man and his dog. The home's director decided to frame the best ones for Walter's wall, and each time someone knocked at his door, Walter felt a little more present, a little more part of the world. Jenna visited every few days, always with treats for Duke or a new book for Walter. Sometimes they'd just sit together and watch Duke nap, talking quietly about what the future might hold. "You know, Duke started something big," Jenna mused. "People are talking about better support for veterans, new programs for K-9 retirement. You and Duke are the reason." Walter shook his head, humble. "We're just two survivors. If it helps, that's enough." By the end of the first month, Walter felt stronger. He volunteered to help in the kitchen and, at the encouragement of staff, began sharing his story with new residents. He spoke not just of war and loss, but of the healing that came with loyalty, patience, and a friend who never forgot him. On a warm evening, as Walter and Duke watched the city lights blink on from the porch, Walter felt the weight of the past lift just a little. He scratched Duke behind the ear and whispered, "We made it, boy. We finally made it home." Duke thumped his tail in reply, a quiet, steady promise that whatever came next, they would face it together. News of Walter and Duke's remarkable reunion did more than tug at heartstrings. It set off a ripple effect through Milwaukee and beyond, a current of hope that spread in unexpected ways. It started quietly at Oak Haven Veterans Home, but soon the bond between man and dog inspired everyone around them to imagine what healing might look like, even for the most broken among them. Word of the reunion made its way to the local elementary school. The principal, Miss Martinez, reached out to Oak Haven, asking if Walter might be willing to visit and talk with the students about his life and Duke's journey. At first, Walter hesitated. The idea of standing before a room full of children made his palms sweat. But Jenna, stopping by with Duke's favorite rope toy, encouraged him. "You have a story they need to hear, Walter. And you have Duke. You're not alone up there." With Duke at his side, Walter agreed. On the day of their visit, the school gym buzzed with excitement. The principal introduced Walter as a hero, but he quickly deflected the praise. "I'm just a man who got lost for a while and found his way back, thanks to an old friend." The children peppered him with questions. What was Iraq like? How did you train Duke? Were you scared? Walter answered each with honesty, never shying away from the truth, but always emphasizing the power of hope and loyalty. Duke performed a few tricks, then settled quietly by Walter's feet as the kids crowded around, petting him and telling him he was a good boy. One little girl lingered after the crowd had thinned. She held out a drawing of Walter and Duke. "My daddy gets sad sometimes, but our dog helps him too," she whispered. Walter knelt beside her, touched by her bravery. "Dogs are special that way. They know when we're hurting, and they stay with us no matter what." She nodded, then slipped back to her class, her eyes brighter. Back at Oak Haven, Duke became something of a local legend. Other veterans, seeing the change in Walter, began to spend more time with their own dogs or asked staff about animal therapy programs. Even residents who had long resisted group therapy began to show up for sessions when Duke was in the room. Big Al, the grizzled Marine who rarely spoke, started telling stories about his time in the service, always with Duke at his side. "If the dog's listening, I figure I can talk," he joked, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard. Inspired by these changes, Oak Haven's director reached out to animal therapy organizations, eventually launching a pilot program where trained therapy dogs visited the home every week. The difference was immediate. Veterans who had kept their pain bottled up for years began to share memories, grief, even laughter. One night, Walter found himself in the common room, telling a story about a sandstorm in Baghdad, with a ring of vets listening intently. Duke rested his head in Walter's lap, anchoring him to the present. Jenna became a regular visitor, never arriving empty-handed. She brought homemade treats, puzzles for the veterans, and sometimes her own K-9 colleagues from the department, retired or nearing retirement, in need of gentle homes. "You started a trend, Walter," she laughed one afternoon, as Duke and a retired bloodhound snored side by side. "People are realizing that these dogs give their whole hearts, and when their working days are done, they deserve a family." The media, never far behind, returned to Oak Haven for a follow-up. This time, the focus was not on the drama of the reunion, but on the long-term impact. A local reporter filmed a segment on the new therapy dog program, showing Walter helping to train a young lab mix to comfort a shell-shocked Marine just returned from Afghanistan. "It's not about fixing everything," Walter told the camera. "It's about making the hard days a little easier and reminding each other that we're not alone." Jenna was interviewed as well. "I used to think the rules were everything," she admitted. "But what Duke showed me, and what Walter taught me, is that sometimes loyalty and compassion matter more than protocol. These two have changed not just our department, but the way we think about service and healing." Word spread to local government. The city council invited Walter, Jenna, and the Oak Haven staff to a special session where they shared their experiences and advocated for increased funding for both veterans' mental health and animal therapy initiatives. Walter, once nearly invisible in his own city, found his voice. "I lost my way for a long time. It happens to more of us than you think. But with a little help and a lot of loyalty, we can come back." The council voted unanimously to expand support for therapy animal programs and to make it easier for retired service animals to be placed with former handlers or veterans in need. The city's mayor declared the first Saturday in May Duke and Walter Day to celebrate the healing power of loyalty, friendship, and second chances. Through it all, Walter and Duke remained humble. They spent their days taking walks, volunteering to help train new therapy dogs, and serving as living proof that a single act of recognition, of loyalty, could echo far beyond one man and one dog. In the quiet evenings, as the lights of the city twinkled in the distance, Walter would sometimes sit on the porch with Duke at his feet, grateful for a peace he once thought impossible. The past could never be erased, but hope, shared and multiplied, could build a future for everyone who needed it. What began as a local human interest story soon caught the imagination of the entire country. The footage from the Milwaukee playground, Duke refusing his take-down command and instead melting into Walter's arms, spread like wildfire across social media. Within days, clips appeared on national news shows and hashtags like #DukeandWalter, #LoyaltyFirst, and #HeroesReunited were trending across every platform. Walter and Duke became unexpected symbols of hope in a world that felt divided and weary. For Walter, the sudden attention was both overwhelming and surreal. At Oak Haven, staff answered calls from reporters as far away as Los Angeles and New York. A cable network dispatched a news crew to spend a day filming Walter's new routine: breakfast in the sunny kitchen with Duke, his morning walk through the garden, group therapy sessions, where Duke lay contentedly among the veterans, nudging hands for affection. The crew interviewed Walter as he sipped his coffee on the porch. "I never thought anybody would care what happened to me," Walter said, glancing down at Duke with a shy smile. "But I guess if one dog remembers you, that's enough to give you a second chance." The viral video drew new faces to Oak Haven. Volunteers dropped off boxes of dog treats, blankets, and homemade cards. Kids arrived with their parents, clutching drawings for Duke and shyly asking for photos. Local businesses offered to sponsor the therapy dog program, and restaurants donated meals for both the residents and the staff. One afternoon, a retired general arrived with his own German Shepherd, quietly sitting beside Walter during dinner. The shared bond of service needing no words. National TV networks wanted in. Jenna Brooks found herself sitting on a talk show couch, nervous in her dress blues as the host played the now famous footage for a studio audience. The host asked, "Officer Brooks, you've trained with Duke for years. What was it like watching him break protocol?" Jenna hesitated, then spoke from the heart. "Duke taught me that real loyalty can't be trained out of a heart. It's something you earn." When Duke saw Walter, all his training came second to that connection. He reminded us that some moments are bigger than rules. Walter and Duke's story even reached Capitol Hill. A congresswoman from Wisconsin spoke on the House floor about the importance of veteran support and animal therapy. The city of Milwaukee announced new policies. Retired K9s would have priority placement with their former handlers or veterans in need, and a special grant would fund animal-assisted therapy at city-run veterans' homes. Back at Oak Haven, life became a whirlwind. Walter, who had once been anonymous and overlooked, now received mail from across the country. Letters arrived from former soldiers, police officers, and ordinary people who had lost and found their way. One letter from a woman in Texas read, "My husband came back from Iraq and never spoke about what he went through. But after we watched your story, he told me about the dog he lost. Thank you for reminding us that hope is always possible." Walter read every letter, sometimes laughing, sometimes quietly tearing up. He made a point to answer the ones that seemed to carry the most pain, offering encouragement or simply reminding the sender they were not alone. "We all wander sometimes," he wrote, "but there's always a way back, especially if you have a friend who won't let go." Jenna, for her part, became a quiet advocate for K9 and veteran reforms. She helped organize city workshops about animal therapy, often bringing Duke and Walter as honored guests. At each event, Duke sat patiently at Walter's feet, surrounded by children and veterans alike, soaking up the affection. Jenna's message, always simple and heartfelt, resonated. Sometimes the system forgets people. Sometimes it forgets its own best teachers. Duke reminded us to pay attention, to look past the rules, and to do what's right. Oak Haven adapted to its new fame with humility and purpose. The staff handled requests from national organizations wanting to replicate their program. Walter, once hesitant to even speak in a group, became the program's unofficial ambassador. When asked by a news anchor if he felt like a hero, he just shook his head. "Duke's the hero. I just held on long enough for him to find me." One Sunday afternoon, as Walter and Duke lounged beneath a maple tree in the yard, Jenna arrived with a new badge for Duke's collar. This one engraved by city order, "Duke, hero, retired in honor." She also brought a message from the mayor. The city would fund a permanent Duke and Walter scholarship, helping veterans train service dogs for others in need. Walter read the letter, his hands shaking slightly. "They're doing this because of you, boy," he murmured, scratching Duke's ear. Duke thumped his tail, content in the shade. Life wasn't suddenly easy. Walter still had difficult days, dark memories, the ache of old wounds, but he was no longer fighting alone. The Oak Haven staff, the community, and even strangers across the country had rallied around him and Duke. In the dining room, the veterans now greeted him with respect and camaraderie. "You brought the whole world here, Walt," Big Al joked one night, raising his coffee in salute. "Not bad for an old soldier." In every corner of Milwaukee, and in hearts far beyond, the lesson of Duke's loyalty echoed. One small act of recognition had spread hope, changed policy, and connected strangers. And for Walter Price, once lost and forgotten, the world had become a place of belonging once more. Not because of a viral video, but because of a dog who never forgot. Spring in Milwaukee felt different that year. The city, once simply a backdrop to Walter Price's struggles, now seemed to pulse with a new awareness. It wasn't just about Walter and Duke anymore. It was about all the veterans, all the service dogs, all the people left behind by systems that forgot to see their humanity. In the weeks after their story went viral, invitations poured in for Walter and Duke to share what they'd lived through and what they had learned together. One afternoon, Walter found himself standing at the front of a packed university lecture hall, flanked by Officer Jenna Brooks and Dr. Marianne Lewis, a trauma counselor from Oak Haven. The panel discussion was titled "Justice, Trauma, and the Power of Connection." But Walter had never felt more out of place. The room was filled with students, professors, city officials, and a row of veterans from the home. Big Al among them, wearing a suit and tie for the first time in years. Jenna, crisp in her dress blues, opened the conversation. "I always thought justice meant following the rules," she began, her voice steady. "But Duke taught me there are moments when compassion has to lead." That day in the park, the handbook said one thing, but my partner chose another. He remembered a bond older than any policy, and in doing so, he taught me what real service looks like. Walter cleared his throat, glancing at Duke, who lay at his feet, eyes half closed, the picture of contentment. "I spent a long time being lost," Walter began, voice rough with honesty. "Lost in my head, lost in the world. I thought nobody would ever remember my name. Some nights I hoped they wouldn't." He paused, searching for words. "I got used to being invisible even when I came back home. Systems don't see you when you're broken. They move on. And if you can't keep up, you're left behind." He looked down, one hand finding Duke's collar. "But Duke, he never forgot. When nobody else saw me, he did. That's what pulled me back. It wasn't some grand program or special policy. It was a friend who refused to let go." Dr. Lewis, the trauma counselor, leaned forward. That's why we're here, she said gently. We need systems that adapt to people, not people forced to adapt to systems. Trauma is complicated. Healing doesn't follow a schedule, but connection between people, or between a man and his dog, can bridge the gap when nothing else works. The students listened, silent and thoughtful. One young man in the second row raised his hand. What would you tell someone who feels lost right now? Someone who thinks nobody cares? Walter considered, then answered softly, Hold on. The world is bigger than it seems on the worst days. If you can't find your way, look for someone or something that won't let you go. For me, that was Duke. For you, maybe it's a friend, a teacher, a pet, or even a stranger. The important thing is to reach out, even if it's just a little. Jenna added, and for the rest of us, when we see someone struggling, we can't just look away. Rules matter, but humanity matters more. If Duke had followed orders that day, we wouldn't be here now. Sometimes, the heart knows what's right before the rulebook does. The discussion turned to broader issues: veteran homelessness, mental health, animal therapy, and justice reform. Dr. Lewis shared research about trauma and the critical role of community. It's not just the responsibility of the government or nonprofits, she explained. It's all of us. We can choose to build systems that welcome, that adapt, that remember names instead of numbers. Questions came from all corners of the room. One professor asked about policy. How do we ensure these changes last? Jenna answered, It starts with one act, but it continues with commitment. Milwaukee has reformed its K-9 retirement policy and expanded veteran outreach because people cared enough to make it happen. Change doesn't come from the top down. It comes when regular people demand something better. Big Al, emboldened by the discussion, stood to address the crowd. Walter reminded us all what it means to fight for someone, even if the battle is just showing up every day. I spent years quiet, but this man, this dog, made me speak again. Don't underestimate what you can do for someone, just by seeing them. Walter, wiping his eyes, finished with a quiet conviction. The most important rules are the ones written in the heart. You can't legislate compassion, but you can practice it. If you remember that, you can change a life, maybe even a city. After the event, people crowded around Walter and Duke, shaking hands and asking for photos. Some shared stories of their own service, their own losses, their own hope. Jenna, heart full, watched as the crowd wove together, students, veterans, counselors, strangers, connected by a single thread of loyalty and humanity. In the weeks that followed, Milwaukee's new model for K-9 care and veteran outreach was adopted by other cities. The reforms sparked by Duke and Walter's story became a template for others. The city funded more therapy dog programs, and schools integrated lessons on empathy and resilience. But the biggest changes were quieter. A college student who called her grandfather for the first time in years. A police officer who visited a veteran shelter on her day off. A counselor who adopted a retired service dog for her patients. The ripples spread outward, touching lives in ways no one could have predicted. Walter, Duke, Jenna, and Dr. Lewis were later honored at City Hall, not for heroics in battle, but for reminding everyone of a simple, profound truth. Healing comes from connection, and justice means remembering the human heart. In every sense, Milwaukee was a better place, not because the rules had changed, but because the people had. Months slipped by, and the warmth of summer settled over Milwaukee. At Oak Haven, the days fell into a gentle, reassuring rhythm. Early morning walks with Duke under the old maples, breakfast in the sunlit dining hall, quiet afternoons spent tending the flower beds with other veterans or reading stories to neighborhood children who visited with their parents. clutching drawings of Duke in their small hands. Life had a steady pulse now, something Walter Price had not known for many years. A sense of belonging, of home. Duke adjusted quickly to his new chapter. Freed from the rigid discipline of police work, he rediscovered the simple joys of being a dog. Chasing after tennis balls, napping with his head on Walter's feet, soaking up the laughter and affection of everyone at Oak Haven. He wore his new tag, Duke Buddy, proudly, trotting around the home like he owned the place. To the other veterans, Duke was more than a mascot. He was a symbol. He reminded them all that healing was possible, that even after years of loneliness or pain, new beginnings could be found. Walter, growing stronger and more confident, poured his energy into giving back. He became a volunteer at a local animal shelter, spending his afternoons working with abandoned or anxious dogs, helping train them for roles as therapy animals for other veterans. Sometimes, he brought Duke along to the shelter, where the old German shepherd's calm presence soothed the most skittish puppies. "See, buddy?" Walter would say, scratching Duke's ears as a shy dog crawled into his lap. "You're teaching them what you taught me, how to trust again." The Veterans Home launched a new therapy dog program, inspired by Walter and Duke's story. With help from city grants, residents received training to help care for and train the animals. It became a point of pride and purpose. Veterans supporting veterans. Each dog another thread in the growing web of healing. On Saturday mornings, Walter led group sessions for new volunteers, sharing both his practical knowledge and the story of how Duke had saved his life. Not once, but over and over. Every session ended with Duke doing a trick or two, drawing laughter and applause, the dog soaking up every bit of attention. Jenna Brooks remained a close friend, a frequent visitor and advocate. She brought gifts from the department, collars, treats, thank you cards from fellow officers. Sometimes she joined Walter for outreach events, telling crowds how Duke had taught her the limits of training and the power of following your heart. "He broke every rule that day in the park," she would say, smiling at Duke. And it turned out, he was right. One evening, the city held a festival in the central square to celebrate community heroes. First responders, teachers, volunteers, and for the first time a retired police dog and his handler. The crowd was huge, filling the park with music, laughter, and applause. Walter, a little nervous but bolstered by Duke at his side, walked onto the stage. The mayor welcomed him warmly, presenting him and Duke with medals of honor and a certificate establishing the Duke and Walter Scholarship Fund, dedicated to supporting therapy dog programs for veterans across Wisconsin. As the crowd quieted, Walter spoke into the microphone, his voice steady, rich with feeling. "Home is the place where you're remembered, by people, by animals, by the love you give and receive. I spent years lost and forgotten, thinking maybe that was all there was left for me. But Duke remembered me when I forgot myself. He brought me back to the world, to this city, to all of you. If you take one thing from our story, let it be this. Never underestimate the power of loyalty, of kindness, of holding on for just one more day." The crowd erupted in applause, many people wiping tears from their eyes. On the stage, Jenna squeezed Walter's shoulder, and Duke barked joyfully, tail wagging. That night, as the festival continued with fireworks and music, strangers came up to Walter and Duke to share their own stories of loss and hope. Veterans who had spent years in silence now found the courage to speak. Parents hugged their children a little tighter. The ripple that had started in a forgotten city park had grown into a wave of change. Back at Oak Haven, life settled into a new season. The therapy dog program expanded, attracting more volunteers and more support. Walter began training a new dog, an eager golden retriever named Sam, to help another veteran who just moved in. Each lesson felt like a gift, another chance to honor the bond that had saved his life. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Walter and Duke found themselves back at Jacobson Park, the playground where it all began. The air was warm, the sky a brilliant blue. Walter sat on a bench, Duke stretched out at his feet, both of them simply enjoying the peace. Children played nearby, their laughter ringing like music. Some recognized Duke and ran over to pet him, their parents waving from a distance. Walter smiled, thinking of how far they'd come. As the sun began to set, painting the world in gold, Walter closed his eyes, breathing in the scent of grass, the comfort of Duke at his side, the sounds of a city that now knew his name. He realized that home wasn't just a place. It was a feeling, a promise kept, a circle completed. And as long as loyalty and compassion guided the way, no one was ever truly lost. When we choose empathy over bureaucracy, we build communities that truly heal. One act of loyalty, one moment of courage, can restore a life and ripple through an entire city. The last scene. Walter and Duke resting together in that sunlit park, surrounded by friends, a grateful city, and a world that finally remembered their names.